I used to poll the men at the immersions and ask them how many of their fathers had the sex talk with them, and pretty much none was the answer. Very rarely did a man raise his hand and say that someone had to talk with them, and even when they did, it was awkward, and it was something that they wanted to be very quick about and get over with, kind of how sex goes sometimes for people. So it's important that we just open this up and actually have the conversation, because the lack of that conversation, the lack of talking about it, has led to so many problems on so many different levels around sexuality. Welcome back to another episode of the United King podcast. Today, we are going to talk about being a warrior in the bedroom. This is a hot topic that most men do not want to discuss, and we are going to get into it today. So at our most recent immersion last weekend, we deep dove into the warrior archetype and what it means as a man to be a warrior. And classically, we think of the warrior as out in battle, slaying dragons, fighting, and that is absolutely essential and fundamental part of what it means to be a warrior. But when we talk about the awakened man and the modern day man and what it means to be a warrior, there's an area that is often, very often skipped over, not talked about, suppressed, repressed, and put down, because there's a lot of men out there that do not feel like a warrior in the bedroom. A warrior in the boardroom, maybe, but not when it comes to the bedroom. And my wife, Nani Leah, came to our immersion and facilitated a process with the men, myself included, that helped us drop into two extremely important aspects of what it really means to be a warrior in the bedroom. And those two things are confidence and skill set. So as far as skill set, there's obviously lots of approaches to sexual intimacy and how to show up as a warrior in the bedroom. Tantra being one of them, awakening the Kundalini, getting that energy to move through the spine, move through the nervous system, and awaken the portal of energy that exists within our nervous system, within our physiology. There's lots of approaches to working with sexual energy, and we're not going to get too into that specifically in this episode. But the other aspect was confidence, and I do want to talk about that, because when it comes to embodying warrior energy, confidence is number one. You must have the embodied knowing of what you're there to do. Again, whether that's the boardroom or the bedroom, confidence is what shines through. That's what people attract to. That's what your intimate partner will attract to. And this is often a place where men will feel inadequate, will feel like they don't measure up, where they feel like there's a problem there, erectile dysfunction, or not lasting long, or all types of things where there isn't an intimate connection, where maybe it feels mechanical, maybe it feels like you're not doing it enough, maybe. So there's lots of challenges that can come up in this, and to be a fully embodied, awakened man, especially in the bedroom, and be able to have intimacy, there has to be a level of confidence that comes through, that shines through. And we need to, one, be able to have these conversations. This is a topic that often is taboo, and has, unfortunately, because of that, has shown up in so many challenging ways in our culture. And the extensive use of pornography is one of them, where someone told me today on a coaching call where it's called the silent epidemic, because it is so hidden, it is so pushed underground, that boys and adults, men, keep this hidden, and will have this whole relationship with pornography, and basically have this false idea of what it means to be intimate. It also can eat away at that confidence, because you see people in those videos doing all sorts of things that you may not do or want to do, or feel like is something that aligns with who you are sexually. So this is definitely a hot topic. It's definitely something that people don't want to talk about. But as we opened up that conversation at our immersion, it was amazing to me to listen to all the different perspectives that the men that were attending this immersion had around their sexuality, around self-pleasure, around having that intimacy with their partner, their girlfriends, their wives, and the challenges that show up there. So much so that I felt like it was important to share this with you. So, want to hit on these two things: skill set and confidence. And this is a time to have a real gut check of like, where are you at with that? If you've been in a long-standing relationship, what's the level of intimacy in your relationship? Like any of the work we do in Ignite, it is about first awareness and assessment, taking a stock of like what is going on in your relationship. How are things going? So that's first and foremost, and then to bring some acknowledgement to places that maybe have been holding back. Maybe there's history of sexual trauma, whether with you or with your partner. You know, my years of being a chiropractor, I took many a history, and more often than not, there was some level of sexual trauma that existed. And to be frank, it doesn't even need to be sexual trauma, just the lack of education, a lack of talking about sexuality with our children is rampant. I have a 9-year-old son, and I'm coming closer and closer each year to that time where it's to have that conversation. And I know for me, no one had that conversation with me. I used to poll the men at the immersions and ask them how many of their fathers had the sex talk with them, and pretty much none was the answer. Very rarely did a man raise his hand and say that someone had to talk with them, and even when they did, it was awkward, and it was something that they wanted to be very quick about and get over with, kind of how sex goes sometimes for people. So it's important that we just open this up and actually have the conversation, because the lack of that conversation, the lack of talking about it, has led to so many problems on so many different levels around sexuality. And this is an area that is a vital part of our life force. It's a vital part of our core energy, our root chakra, our base. It's our health, it's our sexuality, it's our finances. These are all connected to our life force, to our root. And how many of you are actually taking the time to work with that energy, to awaken that energy, to master that energy, to get to know yourself in this way? And again, this is, area and a field that so much trauma collectively and individually has been held. So again, it's an important topic to take awareness on. Like, what is your sexual trauma? What is the places where that information was withheld, or that so just dropping in further to this, as you do this assessment, as you have this awareness, as you're checking into your history with sexuality or lack thereof, or challenges that may come up, how much time and energy do you put into practices around sexuality? And beyond sexuality, this is about intimacy, this is about connection with your partner, this is about creating a deeper bond and relationship that frankly you don't share typically in a monogamous relationship, that you don't share with anybody else. This is one of the things that makes your intimate relationship unique than any other relationship you have with the opposite sex. So again, a real check-in to be like, how much energy am I giving to this? How often am I looking at this? How often am I practicing this? What am I doing to increase my skill sets in this area, which then breeds confidence, and confidence definitely breeds a greater performance. And this again, if this is a life force energy, this is the same with finances. It's the same with your health. All of these things are related. And again, this topic has become just so taboo in our culture. It's very hidden, yet it's something we all desire. It's an absolute essential need that we all have, especially as men and women. But I'll speak specifically to the men here, because that's most of you listening to this podcast. Is how do you tap into your innate sexual desire? And how are you using things like pornography or uh, other self pleasure practices to connect deeper into that? And again, often that's so hidden and can create a false sense of the expectations of the other person. And if we're also giving our energy away to things like pornography, then we don't have any energy left for a relationship with our partner because we've literally given it all somewhere else. So this is another practice of holding that in and not releasing and not ejaculating and not just giving our energy and our power away. There's a lot of practices around retaining ejaculation and having orgasms without actually ejaculation. Again, these are more on the skill set side and different practices and things you can learn through specifically with Tantra. So this is absolutely an area that's important to explore and to be able to have these kind of conversations with your partner, because again, often we come to the table with our own histories, our own traumas, our own challenges around this, but yet we don't actually have those conversations with our partner to share what your desires are, what makes you feel safe in these situations, what are your fantasies. So there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to explore, and often these things can hold a lot of guilt, hold a lot of shame, and be things that we just don't want to share. And in a healthy, intimate relationship, there absolutely must be a space of safety and a place where you feel like, one, you could be heard in what your desires are, and also hear the other person and what their desires are, and know that maybe they're different and maybe they don't match up exactly. And can you find a sacred third, as we would call it, and ignite the king? Or I don't like to use the word compromise because it feels like you have to give up something, but find a common ground where you both are getting your needs met. It's absolutely important to, especially in the realm of sexuality, to make sure your needs are met. Because if it's not, over a period of time, this is often where men will stray, where men will seek that kind of connection or sexuality through cheating or through indiscretions that can lead to breaking up of marriages and ultimately breaking up of families. And that's a huge problem, where 50% of our there's a 50% divorce rate. I think in California, it's like 75%. And that leads to broken families, and broken families based on needs not being met. So are you actually expressing to your partner what those needs are, and listening to your partner of what their needs are and what their desires are? And are you meeting them? So it takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of confidence to address these things, to have this conversation, and then to develop the skill sets where, when you are in those intimate situations, and of course we think of sex and sexuality as intimacy interchangeably, and they're not. There's lots of ways to be intimate without intercourse, and intercourse maybe is not always the end game or the end goal. And that's another thing, because as a man, we're focused on the goal. Like, I need to get to that end goal and then I'm done. Where it's like, how often are you just flirtatious and flirting and building up energy? Like, when does flirting begin? Is it just foreplay right before you're about to have sex, or does foreplay begin much earlier, maybe even the day before, where you're starting to entice and you're starting to give little signals, and you're starting to listen to the signals, and you're letting energy build? So much of our sexual energy actually is in the buildup, is in the allowing things to get to that state of climax. So whether you choose to climax or not, it's really about all the energy that you're putting into the system before you even get to that point. And that is around arousal, and it's around enticement, and it's around feeling seen and feeling wanted. And whatever games or whatever ways you guys in your relationship are building that connection is absolutely important. And it could a lot of times just be around the physical touch and hugging and cuddling and, holding each other in certain ways, giving each other certain looks. And, also another absolutely important aspect of this is getting into the primal and getting into the raw nature that we're animals. And this is something we as animals do. Every animal in nature must procreate. If we weren't doing this, then we would die out as a species. So this is absolutely an innate, essential part of who we are as animals. And in that animal nature is our primal, is our roar, is our energy that we're bringing to something. We don't want to be a limp dick or a limp handshake. We have to bring the energy here. And, there's so many challenges in this for men because of environmental toxins, as far as hormone imbalances, as far as stress, financial stress, work stress, all these different stressors that can absolutely impact a man's ability to tap into that raw, primal, animal energy that's absolutely needed to create a fulfilling and cultivate a beautiful, intimate connection. So again, just to bring us back to the basics here is checking in with yourself. Like, what's the status of my intimacy? What's the status of my sexual relationship with my partner? Is it at a level 10 or is it a level 1? Is it happening often enough for you? Is it not happening at all? Have you gone into that roommate syndrome where you're good friends and you're taking care of the kids and the family, but there's no passion, there's no intimacy, and maybe you've tried to respark that intimacy, but like, what is it really like? Be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself here. Like, where are things at? Where are things at? Where are really things at? And if you're at a level 10 and things are beautiful, awesome. How can you go deeper? How can you explore more? How can it be beyond the sex and more about the connection and the depth and the intimacy? Intimacy, I learned a long time ago, stands for into me see, intimacy, into me see, where there's that transparency, the honesty, and the vulnerability, the rawness, the realness, to just show everything of who you are and to see the other person for who they are in their most raw and real state. When we're naked together and we're doing our thing, it's like all the vulnerability is there. There's no hiding anymore, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place for the deepest connection there is. But how often does sex just become a rote act or mechanical or unfeeling? And we also have to remember that there's different kinds of sex. There's making love, there's fucking, there's screwing, there's all different kinds of ways that we as humans will do this act and what we make it mean. So we don't want to just be like, okay, it's been enough time. Okay, we're done. It's like, no, where are you both connecting in this that is bringing you to a place that's beyond just the two of you? People say it's like, I'm going to fuck you to God. It's like, how often are you having that experience where it's a spiritual experience to have intercourse, to connect in this way that is just one of the most beautiful things we get to share with another human being? And sometimes that's just people just give it away, especially with pornography and how accessible things are now on the internet. It really cheapens the power and the intensity and the depth of what sexuality really means. And unfortunately, we're not talking about this enough. We're not talking to our children about it enough. It's awkward. We're relying on schools or friends of our children to inform them, and more often than not, this does not end well. This only breeds more of a lack of intimacy and connection, and then we just are trying to get our sexual desires met as a release, a physical release as a man. But sex and intimacy is so much more than just a physical release. It is our bond. It is our exchanging of energy, of fluids, of ways of connecting on the deepest level that unify our field around us. When you're connecting as two people coming together, there's a synergistic energy that emerges from coming together in that way. At its most core aspects, it's like that's how children come into this world. We're literally creating another human being in this act of coming together, literally. So I know this is a topic that, again, is not talked about enough in an honest, transparent, and vulnerable way. So I just wanted to start bringing this more into the conversation about being a warrior in the bedroom. Again, most men, if they feel lack of confidence here, don't feel successful here, will overcompensate often in other areas of their life, whether it's in their job, whether it's in their friendships, other areas that, really aren't or really compensating for the fact that they don't feel successful over here. And what I know to be true is that how you feel in your intimate relationship is directly related to how you're going to feel about pretty much everything else that's going on in your life. How are you going to feel about your job? How are you going to feel about making money? How are you going to feel about your contribution into society and your community? If your intimate relationship is off or low energy or not happening, I know personally, then I don't really care much about anything else that's going on. That is the core root of everything else. That is the fuel that or the energy that fuels every other part of my life. So this is absolutely an area that's connected to our life force energy, our health, our finances, our intimacy. So getting in touch with this and feeling good about yourself in this area, again, coming back to confidence in how you're showing up in the bedroom, confidence of how you're showing up in your relationship, confidence of how you're showing up and being intimate. And this intimacy is going to carry over not just in your significant other, but in your family dynamic with your children. It's going to carry over with your employers or employees and how you connect with them. Again, not bringing sexuality into the workplace, but bringing that sense of intimacy, allowing people to see into you, into me, see. And this is going to really open up a lot of places that just maybe were closed off before. So, how open you feel in your sexuality, how open you feel in that level of intimacy is going to have a direct correlation to how open you feel in all relationships and opportunities and what you say yes to. And I know there's a lot of trauma that exists in this area, a lot of religious trauma, cultural trauma, familial trauma. Just the lack of openness and information. And then we are inundated and flooded with images that are so intense. That's the thing about pornography these days, is that it is so intense, and it literally is rewiring the brain and the dopamine system in the brain, where when we're in an actual relationship with another human being, that dopamine has been hijacked, so we're not actually getting the same level of fulfillment or that dopamine release that we would have if we were just having that intimate relationship. So there really needs to be a gut check of how that technology may be overshadowing or getting in the way of your connection on a purely biological and physiological level. So I'm going to keep this episode pretty short because, although there's a lot to unpack here, I think it's important just to even start the conversation. I'll be bringing other people on to talk about this and dive deeper. Share in the comments anything that comes up for you or that you want to talk more about. But wanted to drop this in there. We just had our immersion. We went through a very powerful process and actually working through and embodying this energy and this confidence around our sexuality, which I feel like is just not happening enough. And it was a powerful experience for me as well, because I noticed as we were going through this embodiment practice, the last thing I'll share here is that when we went through the different chakras or areas in our body, and then we got that root, and it was like there was a lot of shame there. There was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of energy that was just stuck. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of men were feeling or do feel, is like, whether you feel confident or not, there's just a lot of energy that gets stuck there. And then as we were working that up and coming through the different areas in the front of the body, it was like when it got to the heart, it was almost like it was trying to harmonize with this area that had been locked down for so long. And I just started to get tendrils of new energy opening up. Just even taking ourselves through these kinds of practices where we're actually consciously working in it. And the question I would pose to you men out there is, how often are you working with this energy? How often are you practicing or self-pleasure that's not just a physical release or sexual intimacy with your partner, but is actual time that you're devoting and putting into these pleasure practices, or these ways in which you can work with your energy and your sexual energy that are often missed. So want to leave you with that. A lot to unpack here. We'll be doing more episodes around this topic, have some guests coming in where we're going to be talking about ways in which this shows up, where men have had to overcome this in lots of different ways. So aho, and like, share, subscribe this episode. Look forward to hearing from you. Have a beautiful day. Aho.